And we are live. Welcome. My name is Laura George, and I'm the Executive Director of the Oracle Institute, which is headquartered at the Peace Pentagon in Independence, Virginia. I will be one of your hosts this evening as we launch the 2020 Building the New World Conference, from personal to global transformation.
And greetings, my name is Stephen Donaco. I am the founder of Social Chrysalis, a teaching platform for building the new world. I will be your other host tonight during the celebration. Now we move to our opening the direction ceremony led by Indigenous grandmothers and grandfathers from around the world. It will include the 7 directions of the East, the South, the West, the North, Mother Earth, Father Sky, and the Heart. We begin with a ceremonial prayer offered by Diane Hardgrave.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Diane Hardgrave of the Shinnecock Nation, the people of the Rocky Shore in Long Island, New York. I come to you today from the deserts of Nevada with a prayer. To the winds of the South, Great Serpent, wrap your coils of light around us. Teach us to shed the past the way you shed your skin. Teach us to walk softly upon the earth, and teach us the beauty of your way. To the winds of the West, Mother, Sister, Jaguar, protect our medicine space. Teach us the way of peace, to live impeccably. Show us the way beyond death. And to the winds of the North, Hummingbird, grandmothers, grandfathers, ancient ones, come and warm your hands by our fires. Whisper to us in the wind. We honor all of you that have come before us, and all of you who will come after us, our children's children. To the winds of the East, great eagle, great condor, come to us from the place of the rising sun and keep us under your wing. Show us the mountains we only dare to dream of. Teach us to fly wing to wing with the Great Spirit. Mother Earth, we've gathered together for the healing of all of your children. The stone people, the plant people, the four-legged, the two-legged, the creepy crawlers, the finned, the furred, and the winged ones. All of our relations. Father, Son, Grandmother Moon, and to the star nations. Great Spirit, you are known by 1,000 names, and you are the unnameable one. Thank you for bringing us together and allowing us to sing and dance the song of life. Wisak. And now I pass the feather as we turn to the east to bring in the direction and the medicine of the east.
My name is Audrey Kitagawa, and I am with you sharing from New York, New York. We begin these prayers and blessings of the East, and as a woman of Japanese ancestry, I pay my respects to Amaterasu, the sun goddess, from whom Jimmu Tenno, the first emperor of Japan, descended and began the story of the Japanese people. Come out of the cave, Amaterasu Omikama, shining sun of the people. Come tend to the broken, shining goddess of the sun. These are your children. Come into the darkness, goddess who keeps hope in the heart of her people. Come take away the storm, you who shines from heaven. In you, darkness is destroyed. Come fill their eyes, the Kamidana of so many hearts. Whose prayer is now a rainbow over Japan. Come paint the gardens again. Your radiance will always return. This you teach to your children. Come out of the cave, beautiful goddess of the sun. Come tend to the broken, beautiful goddess shining. Come into the darkness, beautiful goddess whose light shall prevail. Come away from the storm, beautiful goddess who cannot be defeated. Come fill their eyes, beautiful goddess whose rays rule. Come paint the gardens again, beautiful goddess of the sun. Toho kami emi tamae, toho kami emi tamae, toho kami emi tamae, toho kami emi tamae, harae tamae, kyoni tamae. And now I honor Hawaii, the land of my birth, and call upon the God of creation, Kane. Kane is the creator and gives life associated with the dawn, sun, and sky. A query, a question I put to you. Where is the water of Kane? At the eastern gate where the sun comes in at Ha'e Ha'e. There is a water of Kane. A question I ask of you. Where is the water of Kane? Out there with the floating suns, where cloud forms rest on ocean's breast, uplifting their forms at Nehoa. This side, the base of Lehua, there is the water of Kane. One question I put to you. Where is the water of Kane? Yonder on mountain peak, on the ridges steep, and the valleys deep, where the rivers sweep, there is the water of Kane. This question I ask of you. Where, pray, is the water of Kane? Yonder at sea on the ocean, in the driving rain, in the heavenly bow, in the piled up mist wraith, in the blood red rainfall, in the ghost pale cloud form, there is the water of Kane. One question I put to you. Where is the water of Kane? Up on high is the water of Kane, in the heavenly blue, in the black piled cloud, in the black, black cloud, in the black mottled sacred cloud of the gods. There is the water of Kane. One question I ask of you. Where flows this water of Kane? Deep in the ground, in the gushing spring, in the ducts of Kane and Loa, a wellspring of water to quaff, a water of magic power, the water of life. Life, oh, give us this life. Arise, awaken, arise. The sun in the east from the ocean, the deep ocean climbing to heaven, the highest heaven in the east. There is a sun arise. Makaloa mat has been unfolded. Food is shared in love. The great breath is exchanged. The lehua honors and adores from zenith to horizon. Gratitude to God, gratitude to our ancestors, gratitude with love, gratitude with love. I welcome you heart to this place of intimacy. Let us share in the spirit of aloha. May peace prevail on earth.
And now we turn our hearts and we turn our attention to the South and the medicine, the blessings of the South.
Good morning. My name is Juliann Fraser. I'm a Pictish and Celtic woman of the Keith clan. My family names are the Harvey, which mean battle-worthy, and the Penfold, which mean where animals would stay, or gypsies or druids would stay for a time. And may I first acknowledge the traditional owners of this country where I live, the Wurundjeri people, past and present. May I also acknowledge the law of this land. Southern law is kangaroo, northern law is emu. I'm speaking from the land of the longest ancestry in the world, and I bring with me this morning the love and blessings from Auntie Minnie Mace of Koa Nation, Auntie Rochelle Patton of the Yorta Yorta Nation, Auntie Beryl Carmichael of the Nampa Nation, who extend their hands of friendship and love to all of our brothers and sisters around the world. Matinva means good morning in my Gaelic language. Great Creator, we thank you for your eternal love and your patience and the opportunity to pray in this way. We thank you for all of the challenges that are given to us through your love for us all. We ask for special blessings for all of our brothers and sisters, not just the humans, but our animal brothers and sisters, our feathered brothers and sisters, and all of our relatives who live in the rivers and the oceans. Special blessings for our elders who carry the wisdom to guide us through our crossroads, and a blessings and protection for all of our children. This is a prayer of thanks. Great Eternal Father, we present ourselves before you this day, reaching out to you with all that is pure from within us. Thus your wisdom is spoken into our hearts, and the powers of darkness has no hold over us. Give us the power to spread the truth to those dwelling in darkness, and let this truth, like the rays of the sun, warm the hearts of man. Help us to withstand the ravages of the oppressive world and make this world a better place for our children of the future. Great Eternal Mother, we thank you for the beauties of this world, the beautiful shady trees and the shrubs that produce the air we breathe, the beautiful coloured flowers that give us pleasure to view, the honeysuckles that send out their sweet perfumes in the stillness of the night, the beautiful roses that give us much pleasure to plant in our gardens, the sunflowers that continually turn their faces to the sun, and all those other beautiful designs which thy eternal mind has brought into being. We see the tadpoles swimming in the waters, eventually turning into frogs that hop upon the land, the dragonfly hovering over the lily pad. All tell us a story, for in thine wisdom you have placed your message of change and eternal life in all your wonderful creations, and we look upon these with great comfort of the soul. Matinva. Thank you.
And now we turn our hearts and our minds to the West to receive the medicine of the West.
I am Anahata Pomeroy in Ojai, California. This is the Chumash land that goes from the banks of the Pacific Ocean up the coast and far to the east. 10,000 years of the Chumash on this land. I am here for Susan, who wasn't able to come due to a health crisis that arose. And Susan is a dear friend of the Chumash elder Adelina Alva Padilla. And Susan is asking all of us to please send our prayers to Adelina, the Chumash elder at this time. And so we do that and add our prayers to Susan Christensen as well, the grandmother of this group of grandmothers I'm participating with. So with that, because I come from the Hawaiian Islands, born and grown there, I am singing some of the prayers to the West using Hawaiian phrases. So we are turning in this direction of the West. Let our hearts entrain together. And the gate is closing on this summer season, and it will open upon the season of harvest in the west direction in the fall. And we turn to say, we are so grateful. Already at this gate, healing energy is coming through. And it's coming through the waves that are lapping onto these shores. These waves that come through, bringing us a harvest full of healing as we come to the West. And we see in these waters the whales that are traveling to the south or returning to the north, ancestors of the Chumash, as well as dolphins and the porpoises in these waters frequent. These waters are ancestors of this land and of these waters. We are so grateful for your presence. Turn to the west, to the sun, for all spread for us each day as you set in the west. We are so grateful for the day that you have given and the beauty that you spread through the sky with your golden light falling upon water and land. The promise to return in the morning. We are so grateful for the beauties of the West. We call all loving nations. We call those happy. We call and we send our gratitude. Mahalo, mahalo, mahalo for the beauty waves of the west direction. We bring with us the healing as our gift for this feast of harvest time. And let these gifts of healing flow to Pachamama, flow to all our relations, and flow to each other, a harvest of healing, bringing, answering our prayers and our gifts to you. Oh, Malamapono, oh, Malamapono, oh, join together with these gifts for all. Oh, Mahalo and aloha to all as we walk the beauty way. Bringing peace and aloha. Mahalo.
And we turn our hearts and our focus to the medicine of the North now.
Chi Shaho, Chak Hade Duksa, Daklawedi Hudson, Nishkanishni Hut, Zantagani Ayat. I am Noreen Otness of Juneau, Alaska. I was born in Prince Rupert, British Columbia, adopted and raised Tlingit, Tsimshian in the southeast region of Alaska, originally called the Panhandle. And today I'm going to sing a song that originates out of Sitka, Alaska. Ah, yeah, yeah. Hooray, yeah. Ah, yeah, yeah. Hooray, yeah. Ah, yeah, yeah. Hooray, yeah. Ah, yeah, yeah. Hooray, aya, honey, aya, chuchagu, ai, ahitlich, kawe, tuak, chushugu, ya otseki, achkat, kukunahu, achuhu, kawe, kake, kekwanigwa, hueni, aya, ahia, aya, honey, aya, ahia, hueni, aya, wee. For now, prayers of the North from the Mendenhall Glacier, the healing from that area, the Mendenhall Glacier, and the waterfalls there is very refreshing, and the beautiful winds from the north that come and embrace and encourage and offers up the beauty of the elders of in this direction. And I want to hold up our beautiful elders that are standing in this direction as well. And I'm very grateful for their knowledge and their experiences and their lives that they graciously hand down to us. Chi Shaho, all my relations.
And with that, we turn our hearts and our minds to Mother Earth.
Thank you. My name is Perci Ami. I am from the Hopi-Tewa tribe, and my given name from my grandmother is Okanse, which translates to yellow sand. I am from the Sand Clan, and it is an honor to represent Mother Earth because that is my clan, the sand, the earth that we walk on. I'm honored to share the teachings of the Sand people, of the Sand Clan, of the Earth Clan. We were told long ago that as Sand people, as Earth people, we will be walked on, we will be stepped on, we will be stomped on, we will be invaded, and people will take advantage of us because they have their own wishes, and our minerals, and our coal, and everything will be taken from us. But we will always remain Mother. We will always play and always be the mother. We will always be forgiving, and we will always be giving forever. But now is the time. Now is the time for us to be treated with respect, with the earth to be treated with respect, to be treated with gentleness. Our prayers, my prayer, is to let the earth heal, is let the earth get a break. I hear her cries of pain, and I feel her discomfort as she twists and as she turns. She cries, think of me. I am tired and I am sick. I can no longer carry the burdens that you have placed on me. I am sad that my caretakers fight with one another. My caretakers lie to one another. My caretakers dishonor each other. Please wake up and hear my cries. My pain will be your pain. My sickness will be your sickness. My joy will be your joy. My peace will be your peace. Please choose wisely. I am the earth, and I am your mother. I pray that you will pray. I pray that you will pray with truth and honesty. I pray that you will bring peace back to the earth, and that you will bring peace back into your hearts. It is an honor for me to represent the earth that is crying out of pain, the earth that is shaking, the earth that is asking us to be gentle with one another so that we can learn to be gentle with the earth. Thank you, Esquali Guna'a.
And now we turn our hearts and our minds to Father Sky and also to the heart.
I greet you, brothers and sisters. My name is Mindahi Bastida from the Otomi Toltec peoples from central Mexico. We are all interrelated. Mother Earth and Father Sky are interrelated with her relatives. Father Sun, Grandma Moon, that's Earth, the great star Venus, and also the Pleiades. It's my great honor to greet Father Sky and all the celestial bodies. Na, yoho, you. Tokarmek Nuzaki, Tokarmek Numui, Hamadimaki Mu, Hamadimakita, Dihmewa, Dihmewa, Dihmewa. Great Father Sky, we greet you from the heart to the heart. You know, we are ending this long count of more than 5,200 years. We have witnessed 5 sons have gone away. And the last 520 years, especially in this continent, in the Americas and also in Africa and around the world, we have seen so much taken over instead of taking care. Father Sky, we ask for strength, but we also give you the songs, the prayers, the offerings, the payments that are needed. This is our time. Nobody else is going to speak in our name. We were born with your sovereign powers, and we call upon that divine power, especially for original nations to be in harmony with the universe and with this beautiful planet, with this Mother Earth. Father Sky, we are here at this time. During these 13 years of cleansing, and we ask for strength. We recall the ancestral wisdom, how to live in harmony and in peace with Mother Earth and with Father Sky. We call upon the four elements that are the reflection of Father Sky. Not forever here, not forever here, just for a while. We are going to go back once, and we are witnessing and now greeting today is the Jaguar Day. And the Jaguar is also reflected in the universe, in the stars. Dikamadi, Tini, Dikamadi. Na, Yoho, Yu. Now to the heart. Nangingu, nangingu, 50 shimo ikibupu. Nangingu, 50 shimo ikibupu. Nangingu, 50 shimo ikibupu. For the connection of our hearts, of the heart of Mother Earth and the heart of Father Sky, and the heart of all relatives, especially human beings, to remember who we are, why we are here in these beautiful territories. Remembering that we have a common cause, common mission to accomplish. And this is the care of life. For the connection of all hearts, of all living beings and all intelligence, and all that exist in different dimensions. Na, yoho, nyu. Ikamadi, Onshingitini, Isengwa. Thank you very much. Love to you all, brothers and sisters, and all relatives. Thank you.
I wish to express deep gratitude for the grandmothers and the grandfathers from around the world who gave us a very soulful and sacred opening to this conference. And now it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce our first keynote speaker. Dr. David Korten is a leading critic of corporate globalization and the suicide economy it has spawned. In place of corporatocracy, Dr. Korten is a visionary proponent of local living economies. He is a best-selling author and is known for his seminal books framing the new economy into which humanity must now transition. He calls this new model a living earth economy, and it is organized around democratic, self-governing communities in which people work and co-productive partnership with nature to meet the needs of all. Dr. Korten is a former Harvard professor, and he is trained in economics, psychology, business strategy, and organizational theory. His book, The Great Turning, aptly describes this current period of social chaos. It is the fallout of humanity struggling to shift from empire and domination hierarchies to an earth community of cooperation and collaboration. He also is the founder of the Living Economies Forum and a co-founder of Yes Magazine. He is a member of the Club of Rome and an associate fellow of the Institute for Policy Studies. Welcome,
Laura,
David.
thank you very much, and thanks to all who have called us to order here to honor and care for one another and our Earth Mother. It's a delight to join you all and Riane Eisler, my longtime friend and colleague. So many wonderful friends and companions here on this quest to build a new world. We live at a defining moment of human choice and opportunity to a grim reality. We're on a path to potential human self-extinction. We come together in this summit to explore an alternative path grounded in recognition of our true nature and responsibility as choice-making living beings born of and nurtured by a living earth. It is within our human means to envision and create together a future of material sufficiency and spiritual abundance, of which so many humans have long dreamed. But success requires that we acknowledge and put behind us the monumental human error responsible for our current tragic misadventure. The world's leading scientists now tell us that the decade of the 2020s will be humanity's last chance to save itself from climate catastrophe. By 2030, we must have achieved a 45% reduction in carbon emissions, or we risk triggering irrecoverable collapse of critical natural systems. A little over a year after that warning was issued, the shutdown of the global economy by the deadly COVID-19 pandemic revealed the monumental failure of economic institutions that provide inadequate pay and job security for the most essential among us. While videos of intentional murders of unarmed Black men by white police officers similarly reveal the injustice of a so-called justice system structured and managed to protect the property and privilege of favored members of the favored race. The foundational failure of the current economy is captured by the estimate of the Global Footprint Network that humans currently consume at a rate 1.7 times what Earth's regenerative systems can sustain. The excessive consumption is disrupting the living systems that provide the food we eat, the water we drink, and the air we breathe. We also depend on the health of these same systems to restrain rogue viruses and stabilize the climate that shapes the daily life of Earth's living beings. The current unfolding collapse of these systems renders ever more of Earth's surface uninhabitable by humans, thus driving millions to abandon their homes in fear and sadness to seek refuge in what remains of Earth's livable places. Meanwhile, the fortunes of the richest among us continue to grow as ever more of the rest of us are reduced to a daily struggle for survival. In 2019, just last year, Oxfam estimated that the combined financial assets of 26 billionaires were greater than those of the poorest half of humanity. In the United States, the collective assets of the wealthiest 1% exceeded those of the bottom 90%. The coronavirus economic shutdown followed. Millions lost jobs and homes and joined food lines in desperation to feed themselves and their children. By extraordinary contrast, U.S. billionaires have never had it so good. From March 18 to September 15 of this year, a period of just 6 months, the 15 richest billionaires in the United States saw their collective net worth grow by $401 billion. Yes, $401 billion. That's an average of $27 billion each in 6 months. Jeff Bezos of Amazon.com gained $73 billion. Not bad for 6 months. Elon Musk of Tesla gained $67 billion. And Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook gained $46 billion. We must ask, how much inequality is too much? The current crises are exposing the reality of economic institutions designed and managed by the rich to serve the rich with no regard for the consequences for anyone else. We can no longer ignore the highly predictable consequence of this massive human misstep. To correct the misstep, however, we must recognize why we took it and what it tells us about our distinctive species nature and possibilities. Our early human ancestors developed a capacity for symbolic thought and communication that clearly distinguishes us from the species from which we descended. As we spread across and then out from Africa to occupy the earth, we encountered and adapted in often quite distinctive ways to a great diversity of circumstances. In that process, we came up with an extraordinary variety of answers to the most basic of questions. Who are we? Why? From where did we come? To where do we go? And to what purpose? The result of the human ability to imagine and to create was a world of extraordinarily diverse cultures that a few of my generation were uniquely privileged to experience. In my own case, I was privileged to live and work during the 1960s into the 1990s as a development professional in Africa, Latin America, Asia, and the United States, all on a mission to end global poverty. These were the years of the human transition from extraordinary cultural diversity to the comparative monoculture of the now global economy, dedicated to consumer excess and ever-growing GDP. The diversity of beliefs, art, and ways of living I experienced in the 1960s is nearly unimaginable today. Air travel and modern communications technologies were then just beginning to connect the world. By the 1980s, the world's extraordinary variety was fast disappearing, enduring mainly as tourist attractions in a world dedicated to growing GDP and addicting people to the material enticements of consumer excess. The speed of the transition was stunning, which is in itself a testament to our human capacity for rapid global scale change, a capacity that we must now actualize again in a wholly different direction. Humans are creatures of the mind. We have an extraordinary ability to imagine new possibilities and live them into being. In this instance, however, we made a potentially fatal error. We ignored the reality that we are living beings born of and nurtured by a finite living earth that requires our respect and our care. For millions of years, humans lived as hunter-gatherers, as one with nature and the flora and fauna of Earth's fields, forests, and waters. The process of human separation from wild nature began some 10,000 years ago as humans became tillers of the earth. The separation accelerated some 5,000 years later when we began to organize as empires ruled by kings and emperors who exploited people and nature through force of arms. We came to idealize the lives of seemingly effortless splendor of the ruling few. Then the Enlightenment's advance of the science and mathematics and mechanism launched the Industrial Age and modernized warfare. This mechanistic mindset led us to view living beings as machines, to dismiss consciousness as an illusion, and to explain evolution as an accidental outcome of mechanism and chance. It thus stripped life of meaning, denied human agency, and absolved us of our essential responsibility to care for one another and Earth. On a more positive note, the Enlightenment advanced the idea that reason is the primary source of authority, thus challenging the divine right of kings and supporting calls for democracy and separation of church and state. The transition from monarchy to democracy, however, soon gave way to rule by billionaire financiers and corporate titans whose power resides in their control of money, media, and the technologies by which most of our current communications with one another today depend. Thus, they control our political leaders, our access to information, and our means of living. Why did we allow for this perversion of the democratic ideal? The answer traces in substantial measure to the mid-19th century, when a group of influential economists set out to raise economics to a status among the social sciences compared to that of physics among the physical sciences. Observing that physics achieved its status by reducing its theories to mathematical models, they took a then popular mathematical model, substituted economic variables for the model's physical variables, and declared economics a science. In the process, they embraced money as their defining metric, market price as an objective measure of value, and consumption as a defining human purpose. Following World War II, they embraced growth of gross domestic product, GDP, a measure of market-mediated consumption, as the ultimate measure of economic performance. Denying the reality of a finite Earth, they assured us all that there are no limits to the perpetual growth of GDP, and unwavering dedication to that growth would ultimately lift all people to lives of effortless luxury. It was and it is an economics wholly divorced from the reality of life on a finite living Earth. It won support, however, because it legitimated public policies beneficial to moneyed interest who financed its teaching at prestigious universities, its promotion by media, and its embrace by politicians, and it came with a promise of effortless, ever-growing wealth for all. The misdirection has become so complete that we now eagerly destroy the air, water, soils, and climate stability on which our well-being depends to grow numbers we accept as tokens of exchange that have no meaning or value beyond the human mind. And in so doing, we yield power to institutions adept at advancing this ultimately suicidal cause. The results are now playing out with a deadly finality. GDP has grown dramatically. A tiny portion of our species has achieved unprecedented wealth and power. The rest of us, however, experience growing desperation, and the sixth great extinction continues apace on a dying Earth as humans strip away nature's ability to maintain the conditions of air, water, soil, and climate essential to the maintenance of complex life. Earth now seeks to defend herself from the threat we pose. COVID-19 and extreme weather events with their related droughts, floods, and fires are among the consequences. Our survival now depends on reconciling with Earth as healers rather than exploiters. We must acknowledge that our human well-being, indeed our very existence, depends on the health and resilience of the Earth's stunningly diverse community of life. In Africa, the mother continent of the human species, those still connected with their roots speak of Ubuntu. I am because you are. As leading scientists now acknowledge, life exists only in communities of diverse living organisms that self-organize to create and maintain the conditions essential to their individual and collective existence. Yes, there is competition. Complex food chains require the sacrifice of one life to provide food for another while maintaining a healthy balance of species diversity. The resulting competition, however, is but a subtext to life's larger meta-story of cooperative interdependence. The human body, the vessel of our individual consciousness and the instrument of its agency, is a demonstration of what living beings together achieve through extraordinary feats of cooperation. Each human body, yours and mine, is comprised of tens of trillions of constantly renewing individual living cells, each engaged in intelligent labor to manage flows of nutrients, water, information, and energy mediated by the body's heart, lungs, liver, brain, and other organisms. The result is a living being with a capacity for thought and action, with an intelligent, conscious intention, far beyond that the participating cells could possibly even imagine. We have only the most rudimentary understanding of how our body's constantly renewing cells achieve this miracle independent of the intervention or even the awareness of our conscious mind, which is thus frees our conscious mind to guide the body's external relationships to fulfill its needs for air, food, water, exercise, love, rest, and protection from enemies and the elements. But life's greatest miracle is what Earth's countless diverse organisms accomplish together as they create surface conditions on this planet, unlike those of any other planets we humans have yet to discover. It is surely far more than coincidence that these are conditions essential to life and its continued evolutionary unfolding. Enlightenment science gets credit for many accomplishments, yet its denial of conscious intelligence has blinded humans to truths essential to the well-being of ourselves and Earth. In our quest to meet our current challenges, we must now turn to a defining feature of our human nature, our ability to choose. We have ample proof of our human capacity for violence, exploitation, and destruction. But we also have equally impressive proof of our extraordinary capacity for acts of love, beauty, and caring. Advanced communications technologies now give us the ability as a global species to think and act in common global cause in ways humans previously could scarcely contemplate, and in so doing to choose our common future with conscious collective intention. The current ways, including the outmoded political and economic institutions that support them, must give way to allow for the new to emerge. As tragic and painful as the disruption of COVID-19 has been, the disruption helps prepare the way to a transition to a new civilization. So too does the current mass rebellion against racism and sexism and all the other inequalities and inequities of our what we call our current civilization. Call the current process the Great Turning, the Great Transition, or the step to an ecological civilization. This time calls for a deep transformation of culture, institutions, technology, and infrastructure as we learn to care for one another and Earth to achieve material sufficiency and spiritual abundance for all. The path ahead requires that we join as one to redirect human purpose, power, and procreation. First, we must redirect humanity's purpose from growing GDP to securing the well-being of people on Earth. Living beings grow, but only within continued cycles of birth and death. If our human body continues to grow past adolescence, it generally means that we need to change our diet and get more exercise. In making perpetual GDP growth our defining human purpose, we have made money our defining value and created an economy at odds with our nature as living beings. We now have overwhelming evidence that growing GDP as a defining human purpose is detrimental to the well-being of people on Earth. Imagine flying an airplane on a dark, cloudy night with only an airspeed indicator and an instruction to maximize airspeed. Now, the best way to maximize airspeed is a steep dive, and the result will be a crash. To safely fly an airplane with instruments alone requires multiple indicators, including airspeed, altitude, and direction. Managing our human relationships with one another and Earth is no less complicated. Kate Raworth, the widely acclaimed author of Donut Economics, suggests that managing a modern economy requires two indicator panels. One panel warns when essential human needs are not being met. The other warns when humans overburden Earth's critical regenerative systems. The goal is to stay between the two, to meet the material needs of all people within the limits of Earth's regenerative capacity. Second imperative, redirect power from money-seeking corporations to diverse life-serving bioregional communities. Life exists only in communities of diverse organisms that self-organize to create and maintain the conditions essential to their individual and collective well-being. For humans, this means organizing as substantially self-reliant bioregional communities that link urban and rural peoples, control the resources on which their well-being depends, and are accountable to their members. Focused on money rather than life, we have allowed the transfer of resources from living communities with vibrant local economies to monopolistic, profit-maximizing transnational corporations decoupled from any responsibility or accountability to the communities in which they do business. Profit-maximizing, limited liability corporations are illegitimate institutions. They must be broken up and restructured in ways consistent with the democratic sharing of power and the responsibility of all human institutions to support community well-being. Then the third imperative, that is to redirect procreation from birthing more human babies to assuring every child has a healthy, meaningful, and productive life. Our children are humanity's future, and their care must be a defining priority. The world has more than enough abused and neglected human children. What we lack is adequate attention to the care and development of all our children to their fully functioning human potential. Imagine a world in which every child is a wanted child, who receives the loving care of family and community to produce fully functioning human adults committed to the well-being of all humans and Earth's community of life. Likewise, no one of us should feel we must bear our own children to share in the joy of raising a child, or assume that our own care in our final years will depend on them. We each have a right and a responsibility to share in the joy and challenge of caring for the children on whom the human future depends. Our most essential individual contributions to posterity is not through the replication of our distinctive genes. It is through our distinctive contribution to the care, the understanding, and the well-being of those who will carry on after our passing. Human procreation in our currently overstressed world is a case of less is more. Finite living Earth is the common creation and heritage of all living beings. The products of Earth's regenerative systems must be equitably shared by all. No one holds a right to excess while others are denied their fundamental needs. The more we limit our human numbers, the more of Earth's products are available for us each to share. If we choose to grow our numbers, we have less to share and must get by with less. This possible world, the possible world of our future, will not emerge spontaneously. But we can use our global communications capabilities to imagine and create it together. Creating a future of well-being for people and Earth requires that we quickly shift from an imperial civilization of domination and exploitation to an ecological civilization of partnership and mutual care. From material excess to material sufficiency and material and spiritual abundance. From a world of war to global peace and reconciliation. From dividing Earth into exploitable plots of private property to restoring Earth as a healthy living commons, cooperatively maintained and shared for the benefit of all. From a linear global economy to a global system of circular community economies. From money as purpose to money as a useful tool. From religious competition to spiritual unity. We are called to rethink and transform our institutions of government, business, education, science, religion, the arts, communications, and civil society. Life demonstrates intelligence, intention, and ability to learn through creative trial and error. Humans are life's most daring experiment with the evolutionary potential of a species that combines a creative imagination with a capacity for conscious choice. We attempted to create an imagined world divorced from life, a world that could never be. It was a grave and deeply destructive error. We now face the ultimate test of our ability for rapid learning. What humans have imagined, we humans can reimagine. This is our moment to embrace the distinctive responsibilities that come with our distinctive human capabilities. Let us now move forward to create the possible world of an ecological civilization dedicated to the well-being of people and Earth and to life's continued evolutionary unfolding. We are the ones we've been waiting for. Thank you. Stephen, you're on mute.
Great, thanks. Thank you, David. Thank you, David, for your inspirational talk. We really appreciate you having you here as one of our keynote speakers for Building the New World. And your wisdom is just deeply and greatly appreciated. And we trust will continue to ripple out, not only in this moment, but beyond as people watch this presentation and its recording. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce our next keynote speaker. Dr. Riane Eisler is a social system scientist, cultural historian, author, and attorney whose work has inspired and transformed organizations, policies, and people worldwide. Her research provides a new perspective on our past, present, and future possibilities, including a new social and political agenda for building a more humane and environmentally sustainable world. Dr. Eisler is president of the Center for Partnership Studies and editor-in-chief of the Interdisciplinary Journal of Partnership Studies, which guides partnership models around the world. She is the only woman among 20 academics listed in the book Macro History and Macro Historians, in recognition of the lasting importance of her work as a cultural historian and evolutionary theorist. In the book Great Peacemakers, she is listed as one of the 20 most prominent leaders for world peace, along with Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, and Martin Luther King. Due to her momentous body of work, Dr. Eisler has received many honors, including the Nuclear Age Peace Leadership Award and the Feminist Pioneer Award. So with that, it's my pleasure to hand the floor over to Riane Eisler.
Well, thank you so much. And it's a great pleasure to be with you here today. And I want to thank all of you who have organized this very important conference. And I also want to thank my old friend and colleague, David Korten, for his inspiring keynote. And as you know, what I'm going to talk to you about is healing our humanity. What we can do to build a more equitable, sustainable, and caring world. Now, the pandemic that we're living through today, you know, the COVID-19 pandemic, it has really demonstrated the fragility, the lack of resilience, not to speak of the inequities and inequalities of our present social and economic systems. So while a lot of people talk about returning to normal, I would like to propose to you that no, we do not want to return to the old normal, a normal where even before this pandemic, 1/4 of all children in the wealthy United States lived in poverty. Billions worldwide lived in poverty, not to speak of the fact that we've been literally destroying our natural life support systems. What we need is a better new normal, a new normal I call partnerism. And I know that partnerism is probably a new term for some of you, but as Einstein said, we cannot solve problems with the same thinking that created them. We need new thinking. And as those of you familiar with my work, with books such as The Chalice and the Blade, which, by the way, is now in its 57th US printing and 37 foreign editions, and who know, to fast forward, my most recent book, which came out a few months ago with Oxford University Press, Nurturing Our Humanity. As you know, my work has been dedicated not only to new thinking, but to how we can bring about a more just and sustainable and caring world. So I am going to ask you, because we do need new thinking, to step out of your comfort zones and take a fresh look at all the old social categories we've been taught. Socialist versus capitalist, East versus West, religious versus secular, right versus left, and so on. Because if you really think about them, there have been repressive, violent, unjust regimes in every one of these old social categories. So none of them really tell us what we need to create to have a better normal. And not only that, and this is critical, these conventional categories all marginalize or even leave out the majority of humanity, women and children. So I know that's a lot to think about, but what I have introduced, starting with The Chalice and the Blade, is a new, more inclusive, more holistic way of looking at the kinds of societies we have, because that's what we need to create a better world. And I have introduced what I've called the partnership domination social scale, which, by the way, is the impetus, what is today the growing partnerism movement, to accelerate the forward movement towards partnership. So we've got a lot to cover, but I want to start on a personal note, because my passion for this work, and yes, I have a great deal of passion for it, is really deeply rooted in my own early life experiences, my own childhood. I was born in Europe at a time of massive regression to the domination side of the partnership domination social scale. The rise of the Nazis, first in Germany and then in my native Austria. So from one day to the next, my parents and I, we became hunted with license to kill. I was a small child, and I watched with horror as a gang of Gestapo men broke into our home, dragged my father away. And it was really only by a miracle that my mother obtained his release and we escaped by a hair's breadth to Cuba, where I grew up. I grew up in the industrial slums of Havana because the Nazis confiscated, that's the official term for armed robbery, everything my parents owned. And there, growing up, I experienced yet another injustice, the terrible poverty, the enormous gaps between haves and have-nots at that time in Cuba. And it was also there that I learned that most of my extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, were murdered by the Nazis in the Holocaust, as would have happened to my parents and me had we not by a miracle escaped. Now, obviously, these traumatic experiences had a huge impact on me, and they led me to questions that many of you have probably asked. Why, when we humans have such an enormous capacity for consciousness, for caring? I saw it in my mother, who risked her life because a lot of Jewish people were killed that night on Crystal Night. Why has there been so much cruelty, violence, insensitivity? Is it, as we're often told, inevitable, just human nature, or are there alternatives? And if so, what are they? Well, I found that there are alternatives. And of course, I didn't start my research until much later. And as I said, when I did, it became clear that I could not answer these questions looking at societies through the lenses of conventional categories, or for that matter, through the lenses of conventional studies of societies. That to answer them requires looking at the whole of society, not marginalizing or ignoring the majority of humanity. I also drew from a database that includes the whole of our lives, including where we all live, in our family and other intimate relations, and yes, at the whole of our history, including the millennia we call prehistory. Because what I began to see then, and this is very exciting, are social configurations, connections between elements of a social system that are otherwise invisible, the configurations of the domination system and the partnership system, or more precisely, the partnership domination scale, because, as I said, it's always a matter of degree. Now, the good news is that we do not have to start from square one to really move to partnership-oriented societies again. And I say again, because there is today enormous evidence dispelling the old story, the story that's so succinctly depicted in the very familiar caveman cartoon, that I'm sure you're all familiar with, where he's holding a club, a weapon in one hand, and he's dragging a woman by the hair with the other hand. So what does it tell us? It's always been this way. By implication, it always will be. Violence, injustice, male dominance, that's just human nature. Well, that is a false story of our past, because we today know from archaeology, from anthropology, from linguistics, even from DNA studies, that for millennia, for thousands of years in our prehistory, societies oriented more to the partnership side of the partnership domination scale. They were not ideal, but they were more egalitarian, more gender balanced. Children were not terrorized into submission. Violence, starting with the family, all the way to intergroup relations, it was not the norm. In fact, what we're learning from archaeology, anthropology, linguistics, DNA, is studies warfare is at the most 5,000 to 10,000 years old, which is really a drop in the evolutionary bucket, isn't it? And that for most of our human adventure here on Earth, we did not live in domination-oriented societies, which are themselves only a recent development of about 5,000 to 10,000 years ago. And not only that, and this is really, really hopeful and important. If you look at history through this lens of the partnership domination social scale, because as I said, it's always a matter of degree, what you see is that modern history isn't just, as we're taught in our schools, this random collection of events, because what we see is a strong movement towards partnerism, countered, yes, by enormous domination resistance and punctured by periodic regressions. What we see is that despite their differences, the modern progressive movements have all actually challenged the same thing, a tradition of domination. Think about it. About 300 years ago, the Enlightenment, so-called rights of man movement, challenged the so-called divinely ordained right of kings to rule over their, quote, subjects. The feminist, later the women's liberation, the women's rights movement, challenged another so-called divinely ordained tradition of domination, the supposed right of men to rule over the women and children in the, quote, castles of their homes. The anti-slavery, later civil rights, anti-colonial, today's Black Lives Matter movements, they too challenge another so-called divinely ordained tradition of domination, the right of a supposedly superior race to rule over inferior ones. The movement for social and economic equity, what have they challenged? Top-down control. The peace movement, and more recently, and this is a very important movement, the movement to stop violence against women and children, which is still a tradition of domination that is a global pandemic, but is finally gaining some attention. They challenge the use of violence, of force, to impose rankings of domination, all the way to the environmental movement, which of course challenges yet another tradition of domination. The once hallowed conquest of domination of nature, which at our level of technological developments could lead us to an evolutionary dead end for our species. But, and this is really important, if you look more closely, you see that these movements primarily focus their resources, their energy on dismantling what I call the top of the domination pyramid, politics and economics as conventionally defined, and they left in place the foundations on which this pyramid keeps rebuilding itself in regression after regression, whether it's secular, like the when I was born into the Nazi regression to domination in Europe, which was rightist, of course, whether it was the leftist one, also secular, Stalin's Soviet Union, whether it's religious, like so-called religious fundamentalism, because if you really think about it, what we're talking about is domination fundamentalism. They want top-down control in both the family and state or tribe. So it can be Eastern, Western, Northern, Southern. What we're talking about are all regressions to domination that have rebuilt themselves on foundations that we must pay attention to. Because if we do not, we will continue to have these regressions with all the suffering and horror they bring, not to speak that of the continuing conquest, despoliation, and destruction of our natural environment, all of which we can and must change. Which takes me to what I want to use the rest of our time together to focus on. 4 cornerstones that we must shift from domination to partnership, so we have the foundations that support that more equitable, caring, less violent partnerist system. And you will see that actually they're quite different from what the mainstream conversation, as well as the academic conversation, has been, at least until now. Now, the first of these 4 cornerstones, we have to shift from domination to partnership if we're really going to stop having these regressions to domination, is childhood. Why? Well, we know today from both biological and social science that what children first experience and observe directly impacts how our brains develop, and hence how we think, feel, act, yes, including how we vote, what kinds of policies we support. And this is all detailed in Nurturing Our Humanity, as I said, my most recent book. Findings from neuroscience show that our brain's neural pathways are not set at birth. The issue is not genes. We have been told, again, a false story. The issue is gene expression. And the first years are the time when our brains develop in interaction with our environments, which for us humans, of course, are primarily cultural. Our families, our educational system, our religion, our economy. And yes, these environments are very different depending on the degree to which our culture or subculture orients to either the domination or partnership configuration. So what happens? When family relations are based on chronic violations of human rights, when this is considered just the way it is, right? What do children get? They get mental, emotional models for condoning, for accepting these violations in all relations. And if they are violent, children learn another important lesson for domination systems, imposition, and maintenance, that it is normal, even moral, for the more powerful to use violence against the less powerful as a way of dealing with problems, with conflicts. And while many people, fortunately, reject these teachings, many, many others replicate them, not only in their intimate relations, but yes, they take them into our national and international ones. So, yes, we can change all through life. That's another part of the good news. But what studies from neuroscience show is that people from rigid domination backgrounds, where caring is inextricably connected with coercion, that these people find it very difficult to change. And this difficulty is, of course, reflected in actually how the brain is structured, which helps explain climate change denial and other inabilities to adapt, even accept change. So what do we do? Well, the first step is obviously to recognize the problem. We're finding out today through studies such as the ACEs, or Adverse Childhood Experiences study, that even in the United States, where genital mutilation, child marriage, child abuse, terrible child abuse, are not culturally accepted in either families or, for the most part, in schools either, but that the highly stressful experiences found in domination-oriented cultures and subcultures are still very prevalent, and we must change that. Now, the good news, there are many resources today for partnership rather than domination parenting, for authoritative rather than authoritarian parenting, for nonviolent parenting or use for other caregivers of children. And one of these that I want to refer you to is the Caring and Connected Parenting Guide, which is based on the latest neuroscience, and you can download it for free in English and in Spanish at centerforpartnership.org, a site, by the way, that has many more resources, many more tools that you can use, which takes us to the second cornerstone for a new and better normal gender. Now, I don't think I have to tell you, we've been taught that how gender roles and relations are culturally constructed. It is just a women's issue, just a gender issue. But in reality, as you will see, it is a central social and economic issue that directly affects all of us, women, men, everyone in between, children of all genders. And even beyond that, it directly affects what we are taught is or is not valuable. So let's start with what children learn about what it means to be a girl or a boy or a woman and a man in a society, a culture, or a subculture that orients closely to the domination side. Actually, what they learn is another lesson necessary for domination systems. They learn to equate difference, beginning with the fundamental difference in our species between the female and male forms, with either superiority or inferiority, with either dominating or being dominated, with either being served or serving, which is, of course, hardly a model, is it, for social, racial, economic equity. And they acquire this mental and emotional template before their brains are fully developed. So they have a template that they can automatically and do automatically apply to other difference, whether it's a different race, as in the United States, a different religion, the anti-Semitism, for example, in the Europe where I grew up, and that's reappearing now, or be it Shia versus Sunni, or Sunni versus Shia in the Muslim world, ethnicity, sexual orientation. What we're really talking about is very simply in-group versus out-group view of the world. But that's not all. The scapegoating that children learn in these dominator families, where it's really too dangerous you have to sort of go into denial and deflect your feelings of fear and of anger and of rage from those who are causing it to outgroups, so-called outgroups, according to the authorities, right? But there's something else, and this is really fundamental, and I cannot emphasize it enough. Children in domination-oriented culture, and we've inherited this, they learn another key lesson, that not only women, but anything stereotypically associated with women, such as caring, caregiving, nonviolence, that's not as important as anything associated with men and so-called real masculinity, such as conquest, domination, and yes, violence. In other words, we have inherited a gendered system of values. From the subordination of the female half of humanity comes the subordination of so-called soft, feminine values and activities stereotypically in domination systems, of course, associated with women. Because this has nothing to do with anything, of men against women or women against men. It's internalized by both women and men. And yes, this gendered system of values very adversely affects everyone's quality of life. And we at the Center for Partnership Studies documented this years ago in a study of statistical data from 89 nations called Women, Men, and the Global Quality of Life. And more recently, it's been confirmed. For example, the World Economic Forum's gender gap reports confirm the relationship between the status of women and economic success. Now, clearly, depriving half the population of equal opportunities does deprive societies of enormous economic contributions. But as long as women are devalued, so also, and this is fundamental, are policies considered soft or feminine in domination systems. So you've probably noticed somehow there's always money, right? Well, for prisons, right? Well, what's that? That's the old punitive male head of household domination masculine stereotype. Or there's always money for weapons, for wars. What's that? It's the domination archetype of the hero as killer. But somehow there isn't enough money for health care, for caring, for child care, for paid parental leave, for caring for keeping a clean and healthy not only home environment, but planetary environment, because they're completely related, how we treat Mother Earth and how we treat the so-called feminine, which all takes us to the third cornerstone that we have to shift from domination to partnership: economics. But economics from a new perspective that goes beyond the tired old argument about capitalism versus socialism and vice versa. I want to remind us, both capitalist and socialist economic theory came out of very early industrial times, the 1700s and the 1800s. So on that count alone, they would be antiquated in our 21st century knowledge service era. But it is even more importantly something else. Both came out of times that still oriented very much more closely to the domination system, a time when caring for people starting at birth in early childhood, and yes, keeping a clean and healthy home environment was to be performed by women for free in male-controlled households. So even in the mid-1800s, when Marx wrote, a woman could, if she was negligently injured, she could not sue for damages for her injuries. Only her husband could for loss of her services. So, not surprisingly, neither Adam Smith nor Karl Marx recognized the economic value of this women's work, which for them was just reproductive rather than productive. And so also nature was there for them to be exploited. There is nothing in either capitalist or socialist theory about the vital importance of caring for people or caring for nature. And both capitalism and socialism, as I detail in my book, The Real Wealth of Nations, they're based on a flawed, incomplete model of economics, which fails to include, think about this, the three life-sustaining economic sectors: the natural economy, the volunteer community economy, and also the household economy. So not surprisingly, we didn't have caring policies. And that's exactly what we need today: a new caring economics of partnerism that gives real value and, yes, rewards caring for people starting in childhood and caring for nature, not just, with Mother's Day or whatever the heck it is, or Eco Day, but in tangible ways that put food on the table and a roof over people's head. Because yes, the mass of the world's poor and the poorest of the poor are women and children. And a lot of that is because the work of care is so low wage, poverty wage in the market. And yes, in the United States, is performed mostly by people of color. And really, what we have to really think about, what do we really value? I mean, what did the COVID-19 pandemic show? That our essential workers, right, were those doing care work, healthcare, childcare, providing food and other essentials. Now, here again, a tool. An important first step is changing our measures of economic health. Think of GDP, which is, as you know, the most widely measure used. GDP is crazy. It includes activities that harm and actually take life, making cigarettes and the resulting medical and funeral costs. They're all great for GDP. Oil spills, great for GDP. The cleanup costs, right? The lawsuits, the deposition, they're all on the plus side of GDP. But not only does GDP put negatives in as positives, it fails to include the huge economic value of the work of caring for people, starting in childhood, in households, in the non-market economic sectors. And this, even though we are beginning to quantify the economic value of this work. For instance, a recent Australian report showed that if the unpaid caring household were included, it would comprise no less than 50% of the reported GDP. But none of this information is found in conventional economics treatises. It's not taught in our schools and universities, and it's up to us, to you, to see that it is. So I want to tell you about a new metric, that a tool that we developed at the Center for Partnership Studies. In 2014, we launched Social Wealth Economic Indicators, which, unlike GDP and unlike most so-called GDP alternatives, provide empirical evidence of the enormous economic value of the work of caring for people starting in childhood and caring for nature in terms of human capacity development, among other things, which is the most important economic asset in our new knowledge service age. And this is so important. These social wealth economic indicators, which we are now, because there are 24 of them, updating and condensing into a social wealth index, they are unique in that they also take into account what we know from neuroscience, the vital importance of what children experience and observe in their early years, especially from 1 to 5, when 85% of the structure of our brains is laid. So using SWAYS gives government and business policy makers the missing data they need. For example, they show that the United States is way behind other developed nations in investing in caring for people and nature. So this, not coincidentally, means what we see, that the United States has the highest child poverty rates, the highest child maternity rates, child mortality rates, the highest maternal mortality rates of any OECD nation. And yes, because we invest less in caring for nature, and on the contrary, still subsidize not caring for nature, we also have much more of an ecological deficit. And you can find out much more about this, again, at Center for Partnership or org, or at Partnerism. It's a new website, partnerism.org. Now, I want to stay with this for a minute because we're not used to thinking of economics this way. But what we know today, and this is documented in my book, The Real Wealth of Nations, not only do businesses that have caring policies and the partnership structures that go with this do extremely well, so also do nations. And again, I want to here say that fortunately, we don't have to start from scratch here. There are trends in this direction, which we clearly see. If we look at nations that at the beginning of the 20th century were so poor, they had famines, nations such as Finland, Norway, Sweden, nations that are today regularly in the highest ranks of the World Economic Forum's global competitiveness reports. These nations pioneered caring policies, such as government-supported childcare, universal health care, stipends to help families care for children, elder care with dignity, generous paid parental leave for both mothers and fathers. And this was not because they're socialist. These nations have a very healthy market economy, and it's not because they're relatively small and relatively homogeneous. There are plenty of relatively small, relatively homogeneous nations that do not orient to the partnership side of the continuum, that do not have caring policies. These policies and the resulting high lifespans, low poverty rates, low crime rates, generally high standard of living, happened because these are the contemporary nations that have moved more closely to the partnership side of the partnership domination scale. They're not ideal, but first, they have more democracy and equality in both the family and the state. Second, they've been in the forefront of trying to leave behind traditions of violence and domination. They pioneered the first peace studies. They pioneered the first laws prohibiting physical discipline of children in families, which, by the way, is a global trend. There are now 50 nations that, at least on the books, have laws like this. And yes, they have a much more equal partnership between women and men in both the family and in the state. So women are 40 to 50% of their national legislatures. And what happens, again, this is not that women are better than men, but what happens is as the status of women rises, men no longer find it such a threat to their status, to their, quote, masculinity, to also embrace more caring practices and policies. And anyway, how can we possibly talk about representative democracy if we don't have women be half of the national and other public offices, other leadership position? So we're back to connecting the dots. And really, this is essential for us because if we don't connect these dots, if we don't help our policymakers to connect them, we will stay in the old story and stay with the old language. And that takes me to the final fourth cornerstone, narratives and language. Because as you know, many of the stories we've inherited, well, they really reinforce domination thinking. Think about it, whether it's original sin or selfish genes, it's the same story. I don't know why they argue with each other. We're bad. We have to be controlled from the top, rigidly, right? Fairy tales, my God. I mean, talk about gender roles and relations. Poor Sleeping Beauty, she can't even wake up without a man kissing her. I mean, talk about learned helplessness. And our language fails to value not only women, but men who are more sensitive. When boys are sensitive, nonviolent, caring, they're still in many places mocked as wimps, as sissies, including by women indoctrinated with domination values, which takes us back to where we started, back to language. You know, linguistic psychologists have long told us that the categories provided by a culture's language, and this is especially true of social categories, they channel our thinking, so that it's almost impossible for people who learn and hang on to these categories to see other alternatives. And we need new language for that reason. Terms like partnerism, terms like the partnership system and the domination system, terms like hierarchies of domination and hierarchies of actualization, because yes, there are hierarchies in partnership systems. We need parents, we need teachers, we need managers, we need leaders, but it's not power over, the power to control, to punish. It is more empowering, power to, power with. These are things that we really have to start thinking about. There's so much more I could tell you and would like to tell you. And there are many resources, my books, the websites I've told you. But I want to close with a note of action. The struggle for our future is not between religion and secularism, East and West, right and left, capitalism and socialism, but between the domination elements in all our cultures and the partnership norms we urgently need. And yes, we need to continue the short-term work. Yeah, we have to continue working hard so that our government stops subsidizing fossil industries, so that there isn't this institutionalized racism as in the United States and all of this in-group and out-group thinking. But what we really also need to do at the same time is work on the long-term cultural change, which can be accelerated in our age of these incredible technologies of communication. And as I said, we don't have to start from square one in this shift from domination to partnership. So look, if we are to prevent losing the gains already made, as we have seen during the past 4 years here in the US and in other world regions, if we are to prevent the regressions to domination that cause so much misery and destruction, we must join in the work of cultural transformation, focusing on 4 cornerstones of childhood, gender, economics, and narratives language. And no, none of us can do everything, but everyone can do something. And I'm counting on you to become active agents in the movement towards partnerism. I thank you.
And Riane, we thank you so much. You and David have perfectly laid the foundation for the rest of this conference, have made it clear that there is a new story. Your work actually shows that it's an old story, that there was a time during which humanity had a more equal and equitable footing in terms of partnerism. I just want to thank you very much and acknowledge that during this conference, we are going to be telling this new story and we are going to be building a new world. So our next guest is Yuval Ron. And Yuval is an Oscar-winning composer. He's a Grammy nominee. He's a record producer, and he's also a peace activist. He's known internationally as the peace musician, and he travels the globe with his interfaith Yuval Ron Ensemble. Among his many honors, Yuval was the featured artist in the Seeds of Compassion concert for the Dalai Lama. He also has collaborated with Sufi leader Perci Inyak Khan, who wrote the foreword to his book, Divine Attunement, Music as a Path to Wisdom. Yuval's reflection on music, mysticism, and ancient wisdom bind people of all nationalities and religions and attune us all to the divine. So now Yuval is going to play the ode, and we are going to end this evening with an inspirational closing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yuval. Much appreciated. We are not done yet. We're not quite done yet. Let me pull up my my notes. Because the icon we use at the Building the New World conference is based on Barbara Marx Hubbard's wheel of co-creation, and because she has been such a powerful influence on generations of cultural creatives, we wish to honor her now. What follows is a retrospective glimpse on her storied career in a short video, and then Laura will have some closing remarks. So let me share that screen now for Barbara's video.
Barbara Marx Hubbard was the keynote speaker at the last Building the New World conference in 2015. She also designed the Wheel of Co-Creation, which is a systems theory model upon which the BTNW conferences are based.
Barbara was a true visionary, one of the first futurists, and she inspired generations of cultural creatives with her passionate portrayals of the evolutionary impulse. In this video, here's Barbara explaining where we are on the evolutionary spiral.
That evolution has a direction and purpose. This is Teilhard de Chardin. From the origin of creation, single cells, to you and me. So the feeling I have been able to activate inside myself is I have a purpose. And when I'm able to feel it's aligned with the deeper impulse of evolution's purpose toward higher consciousness, more freedom, and more love, then I feel that inner impulse inside me where I'm one with that, not just one with God in general. I am one with that impulse. And I do have the evolutionary perspective to see that nature, God, has been doing this for billions of years, and we are the first species to be conscious of the impulse and to be able to say yes or no to it. And I would say, you know, from a religious point of view, God took a risk. He took a risk. We got E equals MC squared. We have the nuclear weapons. We have methods of mass destruction now. God took a risk. And if I were God, who would I be depending on to use that risk to empower us to become co-creators? Who would I be depending on? I have to be depending on all of us like this. And none of us look powerful. We're not the head of large corporations. We're not the head of large governments. And so as God took this risk, God gave the power to people who don't look powerful in the old system, because God does not want the power of the old system to dominate the culture anymore. So God had to select brilliant people like each of us, but we don't look powerful at all. So we slip in. You know, we're not coming in like a president of the United States, even if we had a good one. We're not coming in. So what are we coming in as? The agents of conscious evolution. We're coming in as expressions of the deepest impulse of creation that actually is alive in everyone.
Yes, God may be risking the entire universe on us, which means we must take responsibility for what happens next on planet Earth. Barbara also called for a peace room as sophisticated as a war room. At the Peace Pentagon and at the BTNW conferences, we map, track, and connect synergistic solutions in every sector of society. Now, here's a clip of what Barbara said at the last BTNW conference.
It has been said that 5, 10, 15 years from now, if we do not change very, very quickly, we're over 7 billion people now, there may be only 2 billion left. We're talking a horrendous crisis. So all of these sequences are going to speed up or not. Now, here is the amazing thing. There are now enough people on Earth who are not caught, who have the freedom, who are in not just the second tier perhaps, but who have enough food, who have enough clothing, who have enough awareness, and we have the internet and the noosphere, that if you could do a planetary scan and imagine how many people on Earth now would like to realize their greater potential, would like to overcome a crisis that could lead to the destruction of life on Earth, would like to participate in something greater if they had a call. How many do you think it would be? Would it be enough? There is a design in the process of creation where when the system is becoming dysfunctional, innovations are cropping up and there's a tendency for them to connect. And he called it nonlinear, exponential interaction of innovating elements. And the system cooperates in its own self-transcendence. It's a very dangerous moment, but if that tendency for innovations and creative solutions to connect works quickly enough, the actual entropy of the dysfunctional system is the energy which the syntropy uses to take the jump. In other words, you have to have disorder. You have to have crises in order for the system to take the jump. And it seems to me we have precisely the level of crisis we need. It occurred to me that what we need is nonlinear, exponential interaction of innovating elements in such a way that they could quickly connect with each other and jump the system to a higher order. And so I invented a wheel. I invented the wheel of co-creation. I would like to declare that we place the wheel of co-creation to fill it out on a global scale, to reveal by 2020 that we already have a world that could work for all, and we can avoid the crisis and collapse foreseen. Thank you.
Well, it is 2020, 5 years since the last Building the New World conference. And we agree with Barbara that the new world is taking shape before our eyes. Barbara could see what is coming, what all of us will build together. In this next clip, Barbara shares her dream for humanity.
And, you know, I've always been excited by Martin Luther King, the I Have a Dream speech. This is my dream. Actually, now that I'm saying it, because it was even hard for me to articulate it till I talked with you. So I have a dream that the human species will mobilize itself through love, starting at the most intimate level of the family and upwards to society and to all life on this earth and probably beyond in the universe, to say no to thermonuclear bombs and to the climate change behavior pattern that is supporting industries and fuel industries and so on. We say no, but we say yes to planetary evolution based on the greatness and goodness of everybody. And every field and every function has so much goodness in it. And I, therefore, Barbara, have a dream that we do this. And I will see who else has the dream.
Right. We have the same dream, Barbara.
And we're going to manifest it. It was a true pleasure to present this opening night to everyone. It was just lovely to see Barbara again. I know she's still with us in the 2020 BTNW as well. I want to thank David, Riane, and Yuval again, as well as our opening ceremonialists, the grandmothers and grandfather Mindahi, who opened this conference so beautifully. This is the end of opening night. We wanted to just share a couple housekeeping issues. So first off, tomorrow is the start of the sector presentations. Sector 1 will go tomorrow, and that will be at 11 a.m. Sunday morning, because, and that's Eastern time, because our guest speaker, Kiran Virsetti, is going to be coming to us from India, and she's going to be joined by Gina Mazza in a discussion of education as pertaining to children. Then at 5 p.m. tomorrow, Eastern Time, Mark Donahue and Oziama Ugwanuwu are going to be doing our adult educational session. So please join us tomorrow for those. If for some reason you miss a session, you can see them archived on Facebook. You can also see them archived at the YouTube channel. For those in the Facebook group, there's nothing you need to do except pop back into it tomorrow. And for those of you who are watching through YouTube, we're going to need to send you fresh links every day for the new presentation. So those will go out in the morning. And this conference is going on till November 1st. So we've got 2 presentations a week for 7 weeks. Please tell friends, family, colleagues that although they might have missed tonight, if they haven't joined us yet, it is not too late to jump in. We'd love to have more people have access to these phenomenal speakers. And I think that's all I have. Stephen, any other information we need to provide? Or Katie, if you've got messages for us we need to see, please let us know.
Yeah, no, I'm just grateful for just to echo your words about our keynotes, our ceremonialists, Yuval doing our music. It just was a rich evening, and thanks to all of you for tuning in. We don't have a conference without attendees, so your presence, even just energeticity, is appreciated and needed. And thank you so much for soaking it all in and taking it back out to ripple into the world. And on behalf of Barbara Marks Hubbard as well, I thank you.
Good night, everyone. Om Jai.